Welcome back, venturers. It's time for another discussion about the VNs. I am Amar, and I'm joined by my glorious co-host Fate fanboy extraordinaire, Taurus. Well, let's kick off the third year of the podcast with a Readport. But say, Taurus, you look quite pixelated today. What have you been reading?
Yes. Welcome everyone to our third year of adventure podcast. And we're going to kick things off with a Readport. This past month, I actually took a dive into something that's been interesting me for a while. And I finally checked out, it's the Game Jam hit, Milk Inside a Bag of Milk Inside a Bag of Milk. And from here on out, that's a long title, so I'm just going to call it Milk Inside. This title was made for an indie game jam, and it's relatively short at I think only about 20 minutes or so. It's linear. It's got a pretty short word count. You are a voice inside the main character's head. Sort of. The main character is a girl who was on her little quest to buy milk from a nearby shop. And unfortunately for you, she doesn't quite have the right mental state. It's never explicitly said, but it seems to be something like schizophrenia. And so, as a little voice in her head, you have a few ways of expressing yourself through the many dialogue options of how you help her on this quest and the struggles she goes through. If you're looking at the background images scrolling by, it's an extremely pixelated style, entirely of like red, pink, and black. It's very striking, definitely, in more ways than one. In fact, for some of these backgrounds and CGs, it might look downright ugly if you ask some people, but I truly appreciate when a title has style. And when something really strikes out on its own to be distinctive, to be recognizable, to add to the tension, to the mood. Because that's one thing that I think the visuals and the writing and the setting all combined together is that this does end up being a horror title in which you're kind of going along with the MC's thoughts. And the world she's living in is not quite the one that we would expect from our point of view. And so you're constantly kept at the little edge of your seat as you're trying to comprehend what's going on, what's quote unquote real, and what's something of her imagination. It's not far enough to be called fantasy. This is a very normal encounter. But the way it gets processed and the way that she views it and what from you see ends up adding a lot of tension to this little scene. Another thing, do you have something, Emor?
I'm trying to process all the schizophrenic stuff you're mentioning, also looking at the background images. I definitely agree with you that VNs are at their peak if they utilize the art style to sell the atmosphere. And that's definitely schizophrenic in a surreal, even I would say otherworldly vibe. And you said the word mood. Maybe that's the atmosphere I'm going with.
Absolutely. The background music is very, I don't want to say, it's the type where it's always hovering in the background, never demanding your attention, but always slightly unsettling. The visuals are, of course...
So it's, I have to ask, so it's more on the ambient side? Because looking at this collection of images, as well as your explanation, I thought of two possibilities. It's either very eerie and barely noticeable, or is the Fate equivalent of Breach all the time.
Yes, it definitely leans more into the eeriness of it all.
Okay.
So many things about it seem a little off in the way that the especially with the little voice acting. There's no voice acting. It's the kind of thing where someone talks, it's like the little Ace Attorney beep, 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 beep sound effects.
Okay.
And of course, in an Ace Attorney setting, that just, fills the noise. But in this case, where there's so much silence, so much background, hearing those little bleeps instead fills you with a sense of otherworldliness. That instead of hearing written words, you're hearing something not normal human speech. And then you see it in the background. You have very normal scenes, like a street light, and then you have other contrasted images, like a very strange alien figure. Again, it's all a mix of the normal reality and the otherworldly. Plus, this being a little indie title, there's a few elements that really stick out as the creator or the dev knowing their stuff. It uses cinematography pretty well to also enhance the mood. I don't want to get too much into the details because, it's a tiny title, only like 20 minutes long or so. But there are elements that show that this, the person creating this on a budget also brought their own imagination and their own skills to the table. And so there's a lot of charm to it, in just how it accomplishes its message and how it just looks to the reader at first glance. That initial impact, the themes of what it sells itself to. It's a kind of title that you can pick up, and in the first 15 seconds, you have a total grasp of what it's about.
I mean, given your description as well as the visual strikiness, even the title itself, everything is constructed to just grab your attention immediately. You tilt your head to the side and think, what is this? Right? It's like such an oddity, all that put together.
And so I also checked out its sequel, Milk Outside a Bag of Milk, Outside a Bag of Milk. And what's crazy is that this one is more of a full-fledged, official production of a VN. Now we've got all of the big money put in and the production qualities. We are out of the indie game jam. We're into animated opening when you start the game. We're into like high definition. We've got multiple endings and stuff. This is a lot more akin to a full-fledged visual novel release. And the graphics, for example, if you could see, they are still primarily, red and black, almost entirely, except for the main character. And it still keeps that same sense of style, that same unease from her mental state as you're stuck along the ride as you have to view the world through her eyes. And on the one hand, you just look at these screenshots and you're wowed by their presence, by their rich detail. But on the other hand, I'm wondering to myself, did we lose some of the charm from the original? Yes, it's better, and yes, it still keeps a lot of that same style. I don't mean to say that it went in a wrong direction. I mean, it's the sort of thing where it makes you slightly nostalgic for the simpler time.
Again, judging only by the assets you provided and your description, it's still striking, but I feel it's not to the same extreme as the original, let's say.
In some ways, yes. In some ways, no. I think part of the problem is twofold, is that the story is weaker than it was in Milk Inside. Because, like I said, Milk Inside is her going to the store to buy that milk. And how it unfolds and what we learn along the way and how it ends all ties into a very strong, narrative about this girl. And then Milk Outside continues after her, quest to buy the milk and whatnot. And it doesn't have that same focus. We're just kind of going along for the ride as things happen and then it ends. And I'm kind of wondering to myself, it's like, what was the message? What was the impact? It kind of it doesn't hit me nearly as hard as the first one did. And so I think that's part of what I mean when I say it's lost some of its charm. And the other point I wanted to make is that somehow this looks so much more like a fully fledged visual novel, but it's missing so many just core functionality details you would expect. You cannot fast forward through the text.
Oh no.
There is only one save file.
Oh, then.
It has multiple endings. So on the one hand, it's still short enough to where it's not that big a deal once you know where to save. But still, it's like, come on, why do we only have one? It has, like I said, it has multiple endings, and the requirements to get onto each ending are completely alien. It's the sort of thing where you just need to follow a guide.
Oh, yeah.
It's Milk Inside was only 20 minutes. Like I said, it's short, it was linear, it's an indie title made for a game jam. You can get away with not having these features. But Milk Outside, when you've got all this production values involved, when it's reaching such greater heights, it's come on. A title released in, I want to say off the top of my head, it was like 2022, I think. There's no reason you gotta be missing these features in a visual novel. So ultimately, you had Milk Inside, which was a small indie project that really shined, despite its little humble origins. And then you have Milk Outside, which instead, it seems like it highlights its flaws rather than all the great things it's accomplishing. It's like the original, shining in spite of its humble beginnings, and then you have this follow-up, which seems restrained when it should be shooting so much higher.
It's so funny that you mentioned specifically those 2 points, because I feel like in the past, when I tried some smaller VNs, I specifically pointed out skip and save functionality being wonky are the core components that keep coming back. And most notably, I remember Cabaret was the title I really enjoyed and had the problem with both. The skip was just not there, and instead of having manual save, everything has been in the worst possible way auto-saved. Come on! In the end?
You will save when we give you the checkpoint.
Like, no!
Oh man. But, I mean, ultimately, I did very much enjoy Milk Inside and Milk Outside. For different reasons. And they both have their strengths and weaknesses, but overall, I enjoyed both of them, and they really made me think, and I was very engrossed in both of their tales while they lasted. So yeah, I would recommend it. I did enjoy them.
I mean, definitely the... Oh my god, I need to... Oh, Milk Inside. Okay, this is nomenclature, it's so weird, okay? I kept hearing about that because of the game jam. And that, I mean, all those ends that tend to spawn from that tends to be short, so one can try it out.
Mm-hmm.
But you know, the same old. My backlog is long, so I never got around to read it.
Such is life.
Yeah, such is life. But damn it, maybe I should give it a try, given your recommendation of its surreality.
Whenever you get a chance. But speaking of backlogs and speaking of getting around to stuff, I believe there is a very highly anticipated title you've finished recently. It's something maybe we've all been looking forward to for a while, something you've been sharing with others.
Yeah, I've been talking about a lot of it with Ange. He was curious about my thoughts about that title and to just share my opinion when I finish it finally. So yeah, I'm obviously talking about Hentai Labyrinth. So yes, I finished it.
I'm sorry,
what? Titled by... Yes, as you hear, it's Hentai Labyrinth by Alisoft, and you Spunk to win. It's a new evolution of pay to win, but instead you spunk. That us. It's just like I. Okay, this game is so.
This
I like.
this is what you wanted to share with the class today, Amar?
Apparently, yeah. It's
Yeah.
a full-blown comedy, parody, balls to the walls. I don't even think I consider this sexy as much as it was all fun and just comedy parody all the time. The first descriptions, because this entire title takes place in a dream world, right? You are dreaming all those wacky, wild adventures. And you meet some wild, fantastical creatures. And you need to decipher their definitions. Because they never saw a human, and they kept referencing human as a half mermaid, half merman. I'm like, what the fuck is going on? And then you slowly decipher that mermaid, so the females, are the upper part human, lower fish, and merman are the opposite. So if you combine them, you get a human. Like, what? What kind of definitions I had to... Oh my god. Yeah, but it was fun. It was pure, just comedy, parody. My favorite part. I did not anticipate it being done like that. And yes, it has some gameplay. Meaning, you can run into a boss. There was a boss fight. In a twisted Disneyland, let's say it like that. Right? And there is a boss that will turn you into ice cream if you don't defeat him in time, okay? And I ran out of time, and he turned the main girl into ice cream. He ate her, and that's it. And I'm like, okay, I guess I need to load the game because I reached the game over. And the game continues from there. I'm like, what? What kind of button is that? And the protagonist is like, okay, how the hell do I revive her? Is there a revival in the dreams? Then he looks at the stick of the ice cream, and on the backside it says, you won a prize, and he got a new girl. He was so laughing on the floor. Oh my god. Had a winning ice cream. That was so funny.
Yeah, because that's exactly the sort of raunchy comedy that Alisoft is known for, right?
Not necessarily. But yes.
Maybe
yeah.
in that line.
Yeah, I mean, not to the same level of absurdity, but yes.
Okay.
It just like went to 11 all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so, yeah, one day I just sat down, looked at my backlog and went for something, the funniest stuff I have, played it, and I finished that the next day. So that was my brief pause and brief side venture into Hentai Labyrinth, because, okay, I'm not going to postpone it anymore. The real title I was going to mention that I finished is, roll the credits, Amatsutsumi.
You've mentioned Amatsutsumi several times in past Readports. So, for anyone just checking it out for the first time, or for anyone whose memory has gotten a little fuzzy, can you take it from the top? What is Amatsutsumi?
Yeah. Okay, let's go. Yeah, start from the start. Okay. It's a title centered about an exile. So this is how it starts. You read the entire story from the perspective of not quite human protagonist. He calls himself a god, and he is more of a folklore, small kind of deity that lived in a small secluded village. Okay? Why? Because his people were bestowed with a supernatural power to bend others to their will through words of command. And those commands becomes true once you spoke enough emotions into them. Okay? So that's the setup. There is a village of supernatural born people that could issue commands at will to others. and bend them to their will. Okay, but because those commands take emotions, the entire population of that village, protagonist included, are very emotionally stilted and immature in a lot of ways. They can't express themselves very well, and for some reason that will be unveiled in the story, he went out. He is like, no, I'm going out. I need to leave.
He left his village, you mean? Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. Because a voice kept telling him to leave. And that's how the story starts.
Mm-hmm. And so you're saying he has has power of persuasion where he can say whatever and others must obey. And is it the sort of title where he abuses that power?
No. The morality is very weird in this title because he definitely lacks common sense. So sometimes, even unwillingly so, he makes people do things one could consider, I wouldn't say evil, but immoral, because they could spill out their secrets on the whim, because he says so. Or say something embarrassing because he didn't get the clue and memo from the atmosphere, right? So when someone didn't want to continue the conversation and he's curious enough, he said, please tell me. And they went on and spilled their heart out. So if he breached some sort of moral line, a lot of the times it was unintentional and it was caused by his lack of common knowledge and common sense. And that title isn't centered about willingly abusing that power.
Okay. Interesting.
Ultimately, the way it starts to ramp up is he wanted to find a place to stay. And he, the best word I think would be infiltrates a cafe and family that lives in that cafe, and that becomes his base of operations. And he becomes the family member there, even though, obviously, by using his powers, he isn't truly a member of that family.
Okay. You walked into a place and be like, hey, I live here now. And they're like,
yeah, I'm
live
your
here
son.
now?
Yeah, he comes in and goes to the owner of the cafe and says, yeah, I'm your son. And she's like, oh, yeah, that's true. You are my son. Welcome back. Like, okay. And that's how it starts. Okay.
So what kind of VN is this?
Oh, that's a good question. Because structurally, it's a ladder, if you talk about structure. Meaning there is an overarching plot. You could you see the entire thread throughout. So one big ladder. And at certain point during the story, you will be offered a jump off point. Meaning, okay, I have a choice right now, and I can choose to end the story prematurely by basically, I like this girl enough and let me have an ending with her specifically. That's the jump off points that the game presents.
Okay.
Now, interestingly enough, unlike most of ladder structure VNs I played, the drama portion that relates to that character you end up with tends to be inside the ladder structure itself, meaning it's incorporated in the common route, and the jump off points don't start drama, they just basically end the game. So think about it this way. You have a common route during which character A has a problem, drama, conflict, something like that. Protagonist gets involved with that, solve it some way, sometimes supernatural, sometimes not. Okay? Then that kind of problem ends. And after that, you have a choice of the jump off point, which is not how typically ladder structure works. The typical ladder structure is oftentimes before the drama for the character A starts, you have an option to go into that or continue on the common, often named neutral route to continue.
Right. Basically, just if you want to decide to have an ending where you get your happily ever after with this specific heroine you liked.
Exactly.
Right.
Yes.
Okay. So
this is from.
Yeah. Sorry.
So this is from the structural point. If your question was about that. If you talk about thematic and atmosphere, what is about. I'm navigating, obviously, to not spoil anything, but I feel like I can't really talk about this title without mentioning the developer. Because the developer, PurpleSoft, made before that title others that had similar themes. And I felt like with Amatsutsumi in particular, they nailed the supernatural element and took full advantage of it. To compare and contrast, here in Amatsutsumi, there's a lot of drama and problems stemming from the fact of those words of power, which are typically known as kotodama. Those are how the protagonist describe them as kotodama, words of power. And both he uses that to solve some problems, to get into trouble, and or unintentionally, when he's in an unbalanced emotional state, he may by mistake speak some kotodama into existence. Not to mention, if words of power are commands to be executed, wouldn't it be reasonable that depending on interpretation by the recipient, there can be a different outcome? So there's a lot of mystique to that power because it is not as straightforward as one could deduce at the start. In contrast, previously, where I mentioned the PurpleSoft, in the Chrono Clock, they had a concept of rewinding time for 5 minutes, and they barely used that concept. They were so scared, what if we have a superpower that you can abuse? And in the story, they barely matter. This one, in Amatsutsumi, it's everywhere. It's central point. I would even say drama of character number 3 in the ladder structure was one of the best use of and demonstration of that power. By none. Like, holy hell, that was really cool and scary at the same time.
Okay, very cool. So ultimately, would you say you liked Amatsutsumi?
There is one word I had immediately after finishing it. And I think it's unbalanced.
Unbalanced.
I feel like the seesaw was very, very big for me, at least. That's how I feel like. There are 4 characters, and they have each corresponding drama points, let's call it like that, right?
Okay.
And I will divide also the drama portions into the build-up and resolution. Okay?
Sure.
So you have a build-up, so how it accumulates, and then how it's confronted and how it resolves. Okay? I was immediately drawn in at the very start with this concept of how he has to be very careful with words and very careful with emotions, and how during the first drama point, a lot of exploration was about the present moment and how he, a pretty much non-human, wants to become a human, and that's the conundrum. at the same time being the bringer of miracles. That was pretty well executed, and they had a very serious moment in that title when he goes and he gets attached to those people, but he can't really understand them, the regular humans. And it escalates, and I felt like the build-up was freaking amazing. But the resolution kind of dissipated. I'm like, oh, what? So they built up stakes very highly. They said, "Oh, this is do or die. This is what you've been waiting for." And then it's like, "Yeah, okay, we have 3 more dramas to go." So, like, what? How can you dissipate it like that?
Okay, so one of its first arcs kind of fizzled out.
Yes, I feel like they went, or at least this is how I interpret it and how it got invested. I mean, I was literally sitting on the edge of my chair. Oh my god, is he going to XYZ? Is it really XYZ? Something will happen? And then the next thing is like, yeah, it's resolved now. I'm like, what? That's it? Really?
Okay, but, well, what about the rest?
Okay, so that's... After that, I'm like, okay. More to go. Let's go. So I kept reading. The second character drama centered around past, how the past is binding, and it follows him everywhere. And he gets acquainted with a character. Again, in the first route is more of him mingling with humans, and the second was about a character that is some sort of medium, can talk to spirits, a little bit supernatural. I'm like, ooh, so we can explore that part from how humans exercise, right? Go and banish ghosts, etc. I'm like, oh, that's intriguing. But the build-up to the dramas, I'm like, no bueno. Oh, the second round. The second round, again, I'm trying to not spoil anything, but the second build-up was definitely something that felt out of place and out of nowhere. Super weird. The resolution was pretty neat. I give it credit. The resolution was pretty neat.
So, I mean, it sounds so far from what you're telling me is that it sounds like any other VN, though, where it has its good parts and its bad parts. And sometimes some of its arcs are lacking, and some of its arcs maybe disappoint, but it has its good parts too, right, Namatsutsume?
True. And for the majority of those VNs you attribute to, right? A lot of them you would categorize like, you like Route A, Route B, and you didn't like Route C because it had a lot of problems, right?
Okay.
But here, all those drama points, etc., are all part of the common route, of the neutral path. Those aren't optional, they are part of canon that you need to go through to get to the point number 3, which is mostly okay. I didn't have strong feelings. You were kind of thinking about the future, what's ahead. From that standpoint of being a god, can God really live among humans? Well, that's pretty cool. Also, very dreadful use of the powers on a large scale. Yeah. Okay. So, as you see, it was quite unbalanced. It had some good moments, bad moments. I'm like, at that point, do I really want to continue? I often finish VNs. Let's give a final wheel. I have my last drama. It was fantastic. The last one was amazing. I loved it. Every single second of it.
Ah, okay, so it finished strong.
Yeah. Yeah, I really like the last one. It does help that the character that was involved with the fourth one was probably my favorite, by far. And I often talk with you when we talk about who's the best girl, who's the one, okay? And I tend to say whoever resonates with the protagonist, I tend to like the most. And it is undeniable how useful that character was across every single drama point before her own. Every single one of them. She was a very nosy busybody that kept involving herself with other people's problems. And I knew already, I'm like, okay, she's vibing. She's vibing really well with protagonist. Yes. I mean, and it felt very refreshing. I felt like that character was super smart. If you ever watched Death Note, and that's a very typical battle of wits against two characters that tries to outsmart each other. She was that kind of smart. She was very, very, very fast on uptake.
Mm-hmm. All right, interesting. So Amatsutsumi was quite the read for you in the end. It's been a wild journey along the way through the several months it's been you reading it.
Yeah, well, I can't. Every single time when I finished a segment for a given character and was disappointed either with the build-up or the resolution, I'm like, oh my god, I am so demotivating from continuing. But there's that one character that keeps making me laugh and intrigued at the same time. I have huge amount of notes regarding her and the overall rules of those interlocking powers of command and how they interact. I need to see this through. I need to see it.
Nice.
And in the end, I think it's worth it. I really do believe so. I tend to like slow burners, so maybe this is a me thing, but yeah, I really liked it. And the fourth arc, perfect.
Nice. What a conclusion then. And what a new way to kick off our third year of VNture podcast with today's Readport. More along the lines of endings and new beginnings, huh?
Exactly, yeah, and bugs inside and outside.
Yes, of course. Thank you everyone for taking a listen to the episode. I hope you enjoyed. I hope maybe you learned a new thing or two about some of these VNs.
Yep. Thanks, everybody, and venture out.
Venture out.